out why my OBS is crashing after the fact. So, my apologies to everybody, but OBS is not playing friendly tonight for whatever reason, so we'll just take it from there. And now that I've got him in here, we'll kind of start over. I'll wait to see when we get a few people in here. There we go. Yeah, 2 false starts. My internet went nuts. Awesome. So how you doing today, Joel?
Oh, not too bad. You know what works awesome? My internet, because I don't have Alliant equipment anymore.
Yeah, me neither. But
Rogers?
It's Rogers, yeah. But for some bloody reason, there was an incident there today. I gotta get on the phone with them after we're done here. It should work fine. The minute I took Streamlabs off, everything kind of mellowed out. So I'm gonna guess my OBS messed up. So I think we're live. Yeah, we're seen to be live. So we're good to go there. I'll wait for a few peeps to get in, and we'll take it from there.
Cuttlefish realized we were live.
Oh, why'd they come out? Start playing around?
No, he went and hid.
Of course he did.
It was and this isn't the vendor's fault or anything like that, but it wasn't the greatest clutch.
Oh, yeah?
I think that's mainly because it came from a wholesaler as opposed to direct via transship.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And I just think that just because, like, the last batch that I got from Cebu there, they were transship, and the eggs were immaculate. I had 2 clutches and 30 eggs, and 17 of them hatched successfully. Right. I think that these are guys, they don't do too well, going through a transship into a wholesaler and then from a wholesaler to the destination. I don't think it works too well for them.
Right.
But I got one guy there that seems to be surviving. He's been eating live brine shrimp. For now, I'm working on trying to get him to eat some frozen mysis. He isn't quite there yet, but he's checked it out a couple times. He's curious about it. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
He hasn't done a whole lot of color changing or anything like that yet. So I'm going to have to wait and see before I know positively his species there. I know he's sepia, but I don't know whether it's metasepia or sepia bandensis.
Right.
I am going to lean towards bandensis at this point if I had to guess. I would much rather the multifasciitis, and I'll still continue to try and get those. But in the meantime, I'm not going to complain. It would be nice that more than one would actually hatch, but like I said, the actual egg clutch really it didn't have many viable eggs on it when it arrived, and cuttlefish eggs are kind of one of those things where most people aren't going to be able to tell whether they're good or bad or not. So it's kind of one of those things. When you get them, you get what you get from the source sort of thing. But this guy here, he's about 2 weeks old now. Still really, really tiny.
Yeah. I noticed that before. I wish he was out because I could see him before and a little bit of the color. But we're almost there. We got 4 people in here now. How's everybody doing? Spread the word. Hey, let everybody know that I'm up and stable at this point. Not sure what was going on, but it seemed like when my feed would go up, all of a sudden it would come back down. And me and my guest, which is Joel Maxwell, would be sitting here talking, getting kind of things on the go, and everything would just go stupid, and you guys wouldn't see what we were doing, blah, 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 or hear us. So I'm just going to wait a few minutes. We'll get about, there's probably about 3-4 other people that were kind of waiting that were in. I'll wait to see those names and those people talk. And then I'll introduce Joel to you, and he can talk about this fantastic, cool thing he's doing, which he's done before, and let you in on this little secret. Some people might recognize those eggs. I'm going to guarantee a majority don't. You think you'll get any more out of that, Joel?
No, I really don't think so. They're just they're not quite they all seem like they've been damaged or else have otherwise failed to hatch. Typically, a good healthy one's going to look like a grape, similar size kind of thing.
Right.
So it'd be very kind of quite large. Most of these guys here are quite small and kind of semi-deflated. I've noticed some starfish and cleanup crew have started to kind of move in and start cleaning up after it as well. So
Right.
it's probably going to start to degrade there here shortly. So I'll probably remove them in the next day or two. Um, but they, like I said, it was like I was telling you earlier. They are basically it's a case where the clutch really wasn't the greatest clutch, but it's not the vendor's fault at all. It's one of those things where they are actually an item that I would say is better to get via transship as opposed to through a wholesaler.
Right.
Um, they're eggs at the end of the day. So more stops in their chain, more tanks that they're in, the more likely they're gonna damage or be stressed to the point of non-viability, things like that.
Right.
So getting them transship is definitely the way to go. Just to put it in perspective, I had two hatch, one of which disappeared. I don't know how or where because he's too big to get through the mesh. I'm going to assume this guy here probably ate him. Um,
Okay.
they're they're not known for being cannibalistic, but I couldn't even find a little cuddle bone afterwards, so it's hard to say for sure. But the last time I did these guys was about 3 years ago, and it was a shame because the batch was doing very well. It was actually a mechanical failure that led to their demise. But from that batch, I had 30 eggs, and I had 17 hatches viable eggs from that round. Those were direct transship from Cebu. So basically, what happened? They flew from Cebu into Vancouver, and then from Vancouver straight into to Moncton. Actually, no, that one I was St. John Airport, so I didn't have to go to Moncton actually, but flew into St. John Airport where I picked them up, and I took the boxes to the fish store because we were running Maritime Reef back then,
Mm-hmm.
and this was towards the end of Maritime Reef, shortly before we shut down because we were just too busy with our day jobs to really dedicate to the fish store. But this was kind of like one of the last major purchases I brought in for me.
Yep.
That it was 30 eggs, 17 of them hatched, and got to the 1 month mark. And then I had a seal inside a pump go, oh, he's on the move.
There he is. You see that there, folks?
Uh, had a seal inside a pump go, and it leached a bunch of metal and rust in that into my tank. I came downstairs in the morning, and the whole system was just tinted brown. It was not a good day.
Nope. I remember that actually.
Yeah, I was not too pleased, but I waited a long time before deciding to try them again, and it was just relatively recently I had an opportunity to get some very suddenly, so that's kind of why I jumped on the batch, kind of sight unseen sort of thing. But we'll see how this guy goes. He's been eating live brine shrimp so far. Strange Reef was nice enough to hook me up with a 5 gallon pail of them.
Cool.
Lots of mature ones in there, which is great because that's what he's been basically eating is the mature ones. They're actually too big to fit out of the enclosure, so they're trapped in there with him.
Right.
And you basically have to feed them to him one at a time. So I've basically been putting in one a day, and he'll take a little while, but basically whenever I'm not around to see it happen, he'll catch it and eat it. So he has been hunting, but I'm hoping to get him converted over to frozen foods here. So I've been defrosting some mysis shrimp to basically thread onto the end of some fishing line to entice him to eat those and get him converted over. But he hasn't really had much interest in that yet.
Cool. All right. Well, let's we got what we got in here, and we'll just take it from there. So this is Joel Maxwell. Is a guy I know very well here in St. John, and has an interesting sideline on his hobby that he likes to rear cuttlefish And like he said, he did this before. And, outside of a mechanical failure, was having pretty good success with it. And this time, unfortunately, you can see him. There he is moving. That is a flamboyant cuttlefish. Is that right?
Um, Not sure yet. He doesn't quite look like the Sepia bandensis that I got last time,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not sold on him being a multifasciitis, a flamboyant yet. They're much less common to get as far as eggs go,
Right.
and these ones were sold just under Sepia SP. So,
Right. Okay.
it's kind of a crapshoot, basically.
Right. So I'm gonna open it up. I got five. We got five, which is pretty good. And it's a few of my favorite overseas folks, and a few people on this side of the pond as well. So welcome, guys. Sorry about all the mechanical technical issues I was having. I'm working on it, trying to get that leveled off. But Joel is you. Why don't you introduce yourself again, Joel, and we'll go through that again, and hopefully we won't get cut off while you're in the middle of that.
Sorry about that, there, guys.
Nope. So go ahead, Joel. Let them know a little bit about yourself and your experience in the hobby.
I've basically been doing saltwater for the better part of a decade now. Eventually got involved in a shop called Maritime Reef. We ran that for 5 years, but we didn't have the time to run it properly, so we shut it down. Excuse me, sorry guys, tickle in my throat. And so, our both our day jobs were paying us just way too well to really be able to switch off of them and flip over to the shop. So we shut it down, and one of the last things I ordered was cuttlefish. The reason why I ordered cuttlefish is I always liked rearing the weird oddball creatures. So, mantis shrimps, other oddball species of shrimp, dwarf lobsters, that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
one of the things I decided at one point was that I'm never keeping an octopus. They can climb out of a tank and do unspeakable things to you, but in a more serious note, is they are incredibly intelligent. And with the case of an octopus, they are smart enough that they realize they're in a tank. They realize they're confined. They're very, very intelligent. They've got problem-solving skills and reasoning and logic. So they're incredibly smart, a little too smart, I think, to be kept.
Mm-hmm. No
So
kidding.
that kind of ruled out octopus for me. So I had to find something else. And, well, these guys, they're cousins of them. As intelligent. They're close though, and they can't get out of the tank or they do any escape artist things like that. So you don't have to worry about them hopping out of your tank and going in and eating the fish in some other tank, sort of thing. Um, but I got into them. The first time around, I had two clutches of eggs that came direct from Cebu by way of Vancouver. So to put that in perspective, they spent the eggs in total about 28 hours in transit from Cebu to St. John, New Brunswick, and into my hands. And from that batch, I had 17 out of 30 eggs. So that was a direct transship. This one here ended up coming by way of a wholesaler. With a wholesaler, I don't think it's quite the best route for them. The less tanks they have to go and sit in and less they have to be handled, kind of the better sort of thing. So when this batch came in, I really only had a couple viable eggs and ended up with only one guy so far. Not likely to see any others. The eggs are all pretty deflated and worn in now. But they're basically the coolest thing outside of octopus. And since I really don't want to own an octopus or keep one, these guys are the next best thing. Problem with them is, like all cephalopods, they do have a short life. They live between 9 to 12 months. And with their incredible intelligence, when they get old, their decline is pretty rough to watch if you're somebody who gets attached to your fish. So he's not exactly a creature that I'd recommend to everybody. And if you do want to keep them long term, basically getting the eggs and hatching them, rearing them, and breeding them is what you've got to do, kind of thing. Eventually, I will have a nice, successful batch where I'll get some breeding pairs, and I'll have lots. I've got the system set aside to house them for those purposes. So it'll be fun when that time comes.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's what I found interesting about it, right? Because I knew about the last time there where you had the pump fail, which caused the decline of the ones that you had, and remember being a little dismayed at that because the simple fact is they're such a cool little creature, especially your last batch. Those were actually flamboyants, were they not?
No, they were just Sepia
Oh, they
bandensis,
were
which are just
Vendensis.
dwarf fish.
Right.
I didn't want to spend the big bucks on the flamboyant cuttlefish eggs. They are not cheap. This time around, I definitely would have paid, but the store and we worked out a pretty good fair price, given that we didn't know what they were. And even though I only got one of them out of it, like I'm very happy with it because I know that store can get from Cebu as well. So the chance of getting a transship from them is much better.
Right. Right. If you don't mind, Joel, can we get you to pull back and show off your systems a little bit, and I can show everybody why
They're
I.
in pretty rough shape right now.
Okay. Okay.
I'm kind of working on transitioning.
Right.
Uh, I'm trying to work on slowly bringing down my current running systems to switch over to the big tank.
Right.
So between that and a few projects at work, I really have not given the tanks the love that they need in planning to tear them down. The only reason this section of the tanks are even up right now is because I ended up with these guys or with this batch of eggs. Otherwise, it would actually already be down.
Right. Okay. I gotcha. So
But the big tank is right there.
there we go, folks.
So that's what I'm working on bringing online. Those 8-foot tanks on the walls there with the giant skimmer in the background. Once I get the cuttlefish successfully reared and breeding, they're basically the housing segments I'll use for them. A lot of this is equipment that I got when we shut down the shop.
Yeah. So I actually remember that tank and the back tank for that matter. So yeah, I've been kind of impatiently waiting, but I know you're a busy guy, so when you're looking at this stuff, that's that's a lot of work. I think any of us can even look at it and know, from the hobby. And what's kind of funny, if you guys have seen, my little fish that I have for an icon there, those fish I actually bought from Joel and Todd when they were running Maritime Reef, and I dealt with them almost exclusively while they were here. And then basically got into the hobby in a big way because of these guys, right? And Joel, I'll tell you, I was the first guy to come in and like yak, question, always asking a question. And probably why I got so into doing what I'm doing now is wanting to pass along that little bit of knowledge that I've acquired thus far for helping out beginners not make the mistakes I made. And Lord knows I made a few. But managed to kind of move on and keep doing it, that kind of thing. So if you guys, wow, that's a lot of anemones, buddy.
Tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, look at that. Look at all those. They're all rose bubble tips.
Yep, they all started off as one rose bubble tip like 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yep. Is your female frostbite living in there somewhere?
No, I moved her onto a new home after she killed
the male. Yeah.
Yeah, it was not a good scene. She really wanted to breed. He really did not.
Yeah, I got a problem with the Wyoming white and a flurry right now with that. I don't know what's going on, but they'll work it out or they won't. One of the two. So has anybody got any questions for Joel? I really just wanted to kind of show off the cuttlefish. He has the one little guy in there who's cute as can be. You guys have any questions about cuttlefish? You may or may not.
If you're curious about them, a good video to watch is by Z Frank.
Yeah.
It's called True Facts About Cuttlefish. Uh, it is by far one of the most amusing, semi-educational little video segments I've run across for cuttlefish.
Was that a shot? Okay, so Deraticate, you're asking about the 8x4, the big tank there that you saw. I certainly can ask him to move back over and show that off if you want. This was from that tank was from Maritime Reef, and was one of their frag tanks. Are you talking about this one right here? And what's the longest life you got out of a cuttlefish, Joel? Is another question I got asked.
I've managed to. The first time I ever got cuttlefish, it weren't the eggs. I got those. They were probably about. I got one of them actually. They were about 3 months old when I got them, and it would have been about 8 to 9 months when he really started to go downhill.
Right. Okay. So, and this is 8x4 by what's the height again?
13 inches.
13
8
inches
by
high.
4 by 13. So it's basically geared towards shallow, very shallow.
Right. So then another question I've got from Ravencaw was, what would be the water conditions for a cuttlefish? Would it be the same as a reef or more like a fish-only tank? Is there any parameters in particular you have to keep?
Parameters that are pretty easy, actually. You know, you could definitely keep them in a fish-only tank, no problem. Their parameters would be similar to that. You do have to be careful in a reef setting. There are corals that will sting and damage the cuttlefish.
Right.
They have basically one bone in their body and a beak, so they're very susceptible to damage from sharp edges and any aggressive LPS type coral or aggressive kind of coral species.
Right. So like Aptasia, like they are for seahorses, they would be susceptible to stings from something like that?
Exactly.
Right. Okay. And somebody's asking, what's the gallons on that tank? And I have forgotten.
Approximately 240 gallons full. And then it's got a 60-gallon sump underneath that'll be wired in. The bulkheads, the drain pipes on it are 4 1.5-inch pipes, and then it's got 8 1-inch return lines. And the pump for it is a Reflow Hammerhead Hybrid Gold, and it'll be running with the 4,500 gallon per hour impeller.
Cool. Oh, so yeah, somebody's saying they're jealous because that's kind of their end result tank, is they want something that roughly that size.
Oh, yeah. It's a great size.
Yeah. I've actually bought stuff out of this tank when it was full, as I recall. So yeah, guys, this is, feel free to ask questions. Joel doesn't partake of the YouTube community as a whole. And I had just mentioned to him one time in passing, it was like, hey, I've got this thing I've got going on. If you want to pop in and, talk cuttlefish, or if you just want to talk reefing and whatnot, then this is the guy. So, if I got questions, I'll go to this guy. There's him and a few other guys that I trust that I can ask a question and get, kind of a straight answer from. So, yeah.
Looks like the guy's managed to find himself a good hiding spot. He must be, he's probably hanging out inside the eggs.
I was thinking he was. He's probably inside that clutch. So, yeah, it's, he's got the experience, guys. Trust me, he really does. Anybody else got any questions? I'm not going to keep him on here for too long. It's as long as he feels comfortable hanging out. So if you got questions, I want cuttlefish. I think everybody wants cuttlefish. The unfortunate part is getting the ones that have a longer life than about 9 months. From what I know, well, there's a good question right there. So, I would guess that's a flamboyant cuttlefish. Their lifespan is short.
Um, all species are pretty short. All the species that you could easily keep in captive aquarium, they're all the 9 month to a year range.
Right.
Uh, any of the ones that do live 4 to 5 years, they tend to get quite large, actually,
Yep.
surprisingly large, like a couple feet long and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And they need distance travel in order to survive. So they don't really translate into good good captive species unless you're a very large aquarium, 30, 40,000 gallon tank kind of thing.
Right. Like extremely large tank aquarium.
Yeah,
An actual
public aquarium.
aquarium. Yeah. Yeah. So no, it's and like you said, the hard part would be dealing with the fact that these guys are going to die in your care no matter what. And so you're trying to work yourself towards, you say, getting like a couple of breeding pairs, breeding these guys up, and just keeping them for your own benefit, or is there an
Yeah,
end game on that?
basically, they're a species I want to keep long term. So that means that basically, if I want to keep them, for more than 9 to 12 months,
Right,
uh, I have to have ones to replace the ones that are going to grow old and die.
right,
Uh, so that's my main goal. Now, uh, odds are I'll end up with lots of them once I get everything, the whole process sorted out and everything kind of smooth and set and established.
right.
Uh, I'll probably end up with quite a few,
Hmm.
and a few may find their way out of my possession, but they're not for the faint of heart, and they're not a fish for everything. They are a predator. So other fish in your tank, um, they might go for them. Gobies, things like that, are
Right,
perfectly acceptable meals. Dottybacks, a lot of species of wrasses, uh, crabs. They do have a beak, so like invertebrates are not even sacred.
now how big do these guys get if they reach maturity?
These guys would get about 6 inches full size.
About 6 inches. That's big enough. When you think about the average goby is what, 3?
Well, I'm talking even the bigger gobies, like the Valencia species, where they get like 6 inches and they get pretty big. These guys will go after and hunt them too.
Yep, yep, and they got a way to do it because that's what they do.
They're
um
very adept at it.
so so
A
you
lot of people
guys, go
will
ahead.
show you that they're not always adept at it. Sometimes their attempts at hunting are pretty ridiculous. Uh, for example, the guy that I've got in here, he's been eating live brine shrimp. I've been having to feed him one brine shrimp at a time. It has to be an adult, so it's big enough for him to hunt. And the reason why I have to feed him that way is because if I put 2 or 3 or 4 brine shrimp in there for him to pick off at his leisure, um, he'll actually get too freaked out by it and not hunt any of them at all, and
Right.
starve. So I have to, like I said, basically feed them one shrimp at a time.
Hopefully, we'll get him out here again. And everybody can get a peek at him. He's a cute little bugger. He really is. I mean, if you guys roll back, you can see him. If you're looking in here, he's like a bright white spot, I guess, for lack of a better term. You'll see like a that normal fluoresce that you would associate with, for lack of a better term, coral. Um, Now you froze up, or we stopped. We're not live again. There we go. There we go. Why am I losing my live connection? That's really funny. There we go. You still there, Joel? Or did I lose Joel? All right, you guys still hear me in the chat? That's really funny. I'm being DDoSed. There you go, Joel. You there? All right, good. Nope, that's fine. I probably lost Joel. I'll have to get him back, but excellent. Nope. Hey, Road Reefs. Hey, guys, gals. Okay, that's a good question. When I get him back, because I can't eject him either. Yeah. All right. Well, while I'm waiting on him, we'll get those answers. I'll get him back in here at some point. Hangouts has been extremely weird today. This isn't the first time I've dealt with it. People getting lost or myself, and then having to get back in. And we'll sort of take it from there. If you can hear me, leave the Hangout and grab the link again, or message me, and I'll pop you another link, and we'll get you back in here. All right. Figures the first time I try to do any kind of an interview thing, that's when everything messes up, right? I can sit here and yak all day with everybody in here. But the minute I try to get someone in and just kind of focus on it, that's when things went wrong. It's lag out, I think it is then. Come on, guy. So, all right. So, what do you guys think? Is a format like this something you guys are interested in? I got 4 years or 5 years here, so you guys know me. You know what I'm all about, right? So, you think you like it? You think it's something that's kind of cool? Because I got about 7 or 8 people I can do this with and do this kind of on a weekly basis. To kind of intersperse with just hanging out and doing the coffee chat, which I solely enjoy and enjoy it immensely, actually. But if this is something you guys are interested in, I definitely will work this into my rotation. Yeah, we're stuck on Joel. I can see that in the pictures. Come on, Joel. Leave and then come back, sir. That'd be the best thing to do, and probably reboot your phone, or your phone died. Yeah, that's probably what I'll do, guys. Believe it or not, I appreciate the sport, no matter how many people it is. Yeah, Joel's got a ton of experience. He's just one of those people that I will always go to when I have a weird question. And actually, he was as surprised as I was to find out that my red turf algae wasn't red turf algae, that it was just a really aggressive coralline algae that I had in my tank. And, that kind of thing, and dealing with it was just so problematic. And now I know how to deal with it, which is really it's urchins. I've gotten most of that under control, and I'm about to start adding urchins to that tank. But as you know, I'm going to be moving. So now it's turned into, I might as well wait so that I can actually look after that the right way and make sure that I get the best success out of that. So give me a sec here, guys. I'm just going to let them know. And if I get back. Welcome to Internet Connections. It could be something local going on too. Always listen, Eradicate. As far as I'm concerned, no matter what, everybody's welcome in here. I know I've said it and I mean it. It is a thing that I truly believe in, that everybody's welcome to hang out till you prove otherwise. You know what I mean? And you being a troll, you know what I mean. You want to come in and joke around? That's more than welcome too. So, yep, Joel's dropped off. I am going to send him another email invite and see if I can get him back in here. We'll get him chatting for a few more minutes. And we'll see if he pops back in. And if he does, great. If he doesn't, well, unfortunately, that was short. He really wanted you guys to be able to see the little fella. He's in there. Trust me, he is. If you go back and watch the video feed, you can see him. Cute little thing they are. I don't know that I could handle um, a creature that lives such a short life. We're so used to dealing with creatures in our tanks that are going to live somewhere between the order 5 to 30 years. There are people who have had clownfish, like I think the record's 28. You know what I mean? So, some of us, that's the rest of our lives that we're going to have those fish. So, no, cuttlefish is and that, I think we know why now. We're dealing with a creature that can pass after 9 months of having it. And I'm the kind of person, I get kind of attached to my fish. So that would bug me a little, because I'd be like, oh, it'd be a little heart wrenching, but such a cool fish. Cephalopod, as it were, I do believe. So we'll see if he gets himself back in. And if he does, we'll keep going. And if he doesn't, I'll get him in. Oh, he's typing to me now. His phone died. All right. All right. So his phone died. That's what happened, folks. That's why we lost him. So I'm going to thank him again, just in case he listens back. Really would like to thank Joel Maxwell for coming in and showing off what he's doing with cuttlefish. And this last clutch that unfortunately he got 2 out of, but he's never seen one since. And he just has the one. And yeah, Rob, exactly. Nobody wants to go in and see them die. But again, that's their lifespan, even in the wild. So even though they get to about 6 inches and you get to watch them, that is something that you have to kind of accept with that, right? Yeah, that's what you're talking about. 9 to 12 months, that kind of thing to eradicate. That's tough for some people. That's a bitter pill to swallow. And I'll definitely thank him, and I'll get him, coming in here, maybe, helping out with answering questions at some point too. Now that he knows it's here and it's a sort of a safe space, so to speak, then I'm sure we can get him in here more, because again, somebody who's got that much experience, is always welcome to have them around, right? So I'm going to cut it off, guys. My whole point with getting on tonight at this point was to catch you guys over there in the UK. Thanks for being here. I always appreciate it. Roy Reese, you can let Jeeves know. I may get on later on tonight, but at this point, I got to figure out what's going on with my OBS and why I'm crashing, and whether or not it's because of some traffic I seem to be getting. And if that's the case, then I got to talk to my ISP, because at this point, it's another issue entirely. And we'll get that resolved. But I love to thank everybody who did drop in and did get to hear Joel talk about what he was doing. Like I said, if you want to see the cuttlefish, if you go back and watch the beginning of the stream, and watch in the basket, you'll see this tiny, tiny little thing with this one tiny glow on it, and that is one of them right there. So, all right, guys, have a good night. Thanks for dropping in again. Later, taters.